Andrew, what advice would you give new or inexperienced supervisors around supporting the student in their academic writing and getting their thesis completed?
I think the main thing for supervisors for students is that they need to realise it's not their thesis, it's actually the student's thesis. So they need to actually go through, discuss with the students what they want, and realise that part of the learning process for the students is that they are going to develop their writing skills, and getting them to work through that. So do some initial drafts, a plan of the thesis, and work through it from there. And don't worry about grammar and things like that at the beginning. You can worry about things like that at the end. It's really getting the overall structure right. That's the main thing.
So Andrew, any advice for new or inexperienced supervisors around academic writing, getting the thesis completed?
So I think one of the pieces of advice is that the supervisor needs to realise that it's not their thesis, it's the student's thesis. And they need to give the student the freedom to do what's right for that particular student, which might not be the same for every student as well. So they need to work with the students, discuss it, look at the structure with the students, because really the structure is the key aspect, and worry about things like grammar later. Those can always be corrected. But in terms of giving the feedback, I think going through multiple versions of something, giving a little bit of feedback initially, seeing how the student picks it up and then copies that across to other sections, and then giving additional feedback on that is what you want to be aiming for.
Any advice for supervisors on keeping students motivated?
I think one of the things to think about is that you have different activities as part of your PhD. So depending on what type of PhD it is, so I'm in engineering, so a lot of the stuff I do is lab-based. And getting students to spend some time in the lab if they fed up writing, or vice versa, do some writing if you fed up being in the lab. And actually doing other activities as well, because doing the PhD is not just about doing your research, it's also about the whole experience. It's about contributing to teaching and doing lots of different activities when motivation goes down. And a lot of students, it does happen about the second year, and it is going to pick up in most cases again. So don't try and push things unless there's really a need to do that.
Advice around pitfalls and challenges?
So some of the pitfalls and challenges, so some of which I've seen as a director of studies and other ones as a supervisor, is that students do go through rough times, and life happens outside of the university, and it does have an impact on people. And we need to think about what you can do about it. So sometimes you can deal with it by doing some intervention. Sometimes you just need to wait and things will change and they'll improve later on. But other times you've got to realise that actually the PhD is not necessarily the most important thing in someone's life. And there are other things that are more important, and you've got to realise that sometimes actually someone dropping out is the right thing for them to do. And that's really the key thing, is what is the right thing for the student, rather than how it's going to look in terms of metrics, etc.
Your first ever supervision experience, if someone could have given you a real gem of advice, or you think, I wish I'd done this differently, or I wish I'd known this, is there anything you can think of?
It's recruitment, yeah.
Recruitment?
Yeah.
Okay. So, can I ask you a question though? So, what's your best advice for effectively recruiting students?
So I think the best thing for effectively recruiting students is make sure that you've got a student who's got initiative, who can think for themselves and doesn't want to just try and do the type of things that you've done. So it has to be somebody who can actually teach you things as well, because as a supervisor, you're not just about telling the student what to do, you should be learning from the students as well. So make sure you choose a student who's got the initiative, who can write well, because that's going to solve a lot of problems later on.
Do you have any specific questions or activities you get students to do during recruitment to test that, or is it just your instinct from talking to them? And
talking. I mean, I suppose what I've done is I've got students to write. I suppose depending on what it is. So if it's a if it's a URS or something, I've got them to write a research proposal, and I have literally had students say, well, send me your papers so I can use them to write what I want to do, which is not what you want. You want students to show you what they want to do.
Perfect. What are your selection and recruitment methods, and why are they effective?
Yeah. So in terms of selection, I think one of the things that I've done is I've got students to write a research proposal if it's for a PhD that doesn't have a specific topic associated with it. And I've had students in the past who have done things like ask me for my previous papers so they can copy what I've done and base their research on that. And that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is someone who can come up with ideas, their own ideas, because it is their PhD again. I've got my PhD already. So it's about the new area of research that they could open up, and just having that initiative is key in the selection process, along with all the other things such as, what is their ability in terms of how they've done in previous studies, how they write, etc.